Welcome to F1 or F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Gabe.
Hey, I'm Idris.
Well, everybody, the time has come for us today to talk about Drive to Survive Season 5.
Yeah, Season 5. Yeah, this is the show that I think really broke the ice for F1. I think between this and I would also say just Formula One having like the F1 TV app to make it more accessible for people to like access.
Yeah.
I think these two are the game changers for F1, for the sport.
Yes, the app for sure. I've mentioned it previously in I think our intro episode where like in 2010, I had to like look up like what streaming services, or not streaming service, what channels on our Dish network did I have to get in order to actually watch the sport. And like you had to upgrade the package in order to get the one channel, and I had to like coerce my parents into upgrading their package to get the one channel so I could watch it. I would agree, at least in a modern context. I would say that like for me, and I think for a lot of people that I've actually noticed too, that things like Top Gear, like the Top Gear with like Jeremy Clarkson and James May and Richard Hammond, they had segments with Formula drivers. They were doing F1 driver interviews before, out in England, like before anything kind of came to the States. So there was a lot of introduction to people from that kind of context.
Yeah.
And also there's been lots of really good movies that have come out and documentaries too. The Senna documentary, the Michael Schumacher documentary, and like movies like Rush. I really hope they make more Formula One movies because there's so many stories that they could cover.
I mean, there's one. Lewis is working on one with Brad Pitt right now, right? And I just saw a headline. Stefano Domenicali, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yes.
President of FIA. He was saying that he thinks like the whole filming process is going to be super invasive and everything. And I mean, I don't think it had like a super negative flavor to it, but I think he was just concerned about like what impact that would have on F1 being able to have like a good product like for races and all that kind of stuff. But whatever, we want F1 movies, so stuff it.
Could you picture this. I just had this thought. Picture this. Imagine either a Crashgate movie or a movie with Renault in like 2006, like 2005, like the Fernando. And imagine, who's going to play Fernando?
Who?
Pedro Pascal. I mean, come on. He would do so good.
The Mandalorian.
I mean, like he's
Fernando
super hot right now, right? Like he's super popular, but also like he just looks so much like Fernando Alonso. He could pull that off. It would be amazing. Maybe at some point during this episode, we should just talk about speculating like what actors would play the drivers.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm saying Pedro Pascal for Fernando Alonso is what 100%. I'm suggesting. Yeah. Who would play Stroll? That's the real one. But anyway, let's talk about Drive to Survive before we get too far.
Real quick. I have it. It's in my head right now. I gotta say it. So it would have to be a retrospective film, right? So it's like Fernando as he's winning this season's championship, right? And then it's him on the podium. He's hoisting up the World Drivers' Championship trophy. And he's like, "Viva Aston Martin," everything. And then Lawrence Stroll comes up and like pats him on the back. He's like, "Oh, I know you could do it, son," right? And then it just like zooms into Alonso's face, into one of his eyes, and then it zooms out, and then it's him in 2005 when he's racing for Renault, right? For his first championship driving season.
Yeah. You're talking about the scenes already.
Oh man,
who's playing Lawrence Stroll? Is that
John Goodman?
John Goodman. That's not bad. Yeah, man, this is that's fun. That's so fun to think about. Just our fantasy F1 movies. Yeah.
We should use AI and storyboard this.
Oh, well, see, if we do that, then Pedro Pascal's going to have like 7 fingers on the one hand, and like they're all going to be pinky fingers and like 3 thumbs.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about manufactured drama, edited drama,
some spicy drama.
I will say, just a disclosure for everybody out there, if you've come to Formula One after watching Drive to Survive, first of all, welcome.
Yes.
And
welcome to the fam.
Welcome to the fam. But what I'm going to tell you is that, yes, Drive to Survive, I think, is an incredible primer for the sport. 100%. However, there are lots of stuff that happens in Drive to Survive that is either over dramatized or under dramatized or just left out completely, based on they don't want to interview this person because they're boring or they don't think this is that important.
So true.
And And you only really know that context if you watch the sport and kind of follow the news. And so that's the funny thing. Like every time the new season comes out, it's like, okay, what are they going to leave out? What are they going to keep in? And I don't know about you, Idris. I think I remember texting you at the time. I had to find it on YouTube. But when I say this, if you pay attention, you will probably never be able to unhear it. And I'll find the sound clip and I'll add it into this episode. But there is a particular cheering crowd noise. And it's right here. Yeah. I heard that once and then I heard it twice and then like within the same scene. And I'm just like, are they just pumping in the same generic crowd cheer noise? Like throughout the whole, like they might as well put in a Wilhelm scream when one of the cars crashes. You know what I mean? Like, because it was just so overdone. I was like, it takes me out of the reality of it.
You know, I would much rather hear just like real organic cheering. Yeah. How about that?
It's not like people aren't cheering.
Yeah. People are losing their brains.
Like you're at a race event, just put somebody out in the crowd with a microphone and record some cheering. Like, you know,
I don't know why they go with the stock footage stuff. It's ridiculous.
But anyway, Idris, let's have, I'm going to have you talk about the first episode of season 5 and let's just say woof.
Yeah.
As far as that title and sort of what was happening.
The New Dawn is the name of the first episode. So first off, I got to say that I really enjoy watching Drive to Survive after having watched the full season previously, right? Because it's like, it's cool because you know what's going to happen, right? Yeah. And like, you see Mattia Bonotto there and you're like, oh, baby. Oh, sweet summer child. You don't know what's coming to you.
They're driving in the Fiat with Gunther. And they're just like, oh, we're going to have great season. And
we love our jobs. Talk about great job security.
Oh man, yeah. If you don't know, Ferrari's New Dawn was more of like another Dusk.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's true.
Ferrari doing Ferrari things. Jesus Christ! Oh my God.
I mean, this whole episode. I mean, and believe me, when you were there watching it, you were stoked.
You believe it.
Like when the beginning of the season, they were doing so well. Like literally the first race, both Red Bulls spin out or like, you know, they fail and they don't finish. And you're like, dude, it's Ferrari's season. Like Charles is going to win this. And then just like several races later, it's just like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And what kills me is that I don't like Ferrari in the sense that like you don't like the Lakers or you don't like the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like, I like the drivers for Ferrari. Like I love Charles. I love Carlos.
Yes.
But I can't ever buy Ferrari merchandise because that would just be wrong.
Well, who can afford it?
No, that's the other thing, right?
I bought a lanyard from when we were in Austin, which I haven't used because as it turns out, the lanyard, I wanted to replace my lanyard for my keys, but as it turns out, the lanyard that I got from Ferrari, it doesn't work as a key lanyard.
Of course. Of course.
But I think they charged me like $25 for it. And it wasn't even for sale. It was just like hanging out. I was like, hey, I want that lanyard. You sell me that lanyard? And they just like,
dude, Ferrari is the only team that can be performing the worst of all the teams. And they're still charging a premium for their merch.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes. And here's the thing on that subject of not liking Ferrari. So for me, personally, my first exposure to Ferrari when I started watching was with Massa and Alonso.
Yes.
And so obviously because Alonso, you know, my favorite driver, I supported Alonso. I didn't support Ferrari. And that tends to be how I operate generally. I support drivers, not necessarily the teams that they're with, but more the drivers because I want the drivers to succeed. So Fernando, he put in his time. He did everything for Ferrari. He just like, I mean, unfortunately, like Red Bull was just such at the top of their game that it was hard to compete, but he came really close, especially that 2012 season. And so as a Ferrari driver, I loved Fernando Alonso. I really supported him and I wanted to see him. And I think he looked great in that red car and his helmet worked really well. But yeah, you're right. I don't care for Ferrari as a manufacturer,
as an institution,
like, you know. And it's not because their cars aren't cool. Believe me, if I were to ever buy a Ferrari, what I would want is a 355. It's like
that's a good one.
It has the sound that every Ferrari, when you think of a Ferrari, what it sounds like it is the sound of this car. it is just that perfect high pitch wailing revving noise. It's just like, from when I was a kid, that's what I like. But honestly, like, the hassle of owning one and being part of that club is just not worth it. And so that's the thing that's interesting with Drive to Survive, especially this first episode. They paint this as like, oh, it's Ferrari's new dawn, it's their new time to shine. And it's like, yeah, they got a great start to the season, but like, it's just they spoke too soon, and they kind of yeah.
And what's interesting too about this first episode is just seeing like the hope and optimism with Mattia. And because I personally, I like, up until this season, I always thought he was doing as good of a job as possible, right? At least better than Arriva Bene, who was the previous team principal for Ferrari. And watching like how much hope and anticipation he had for the season going into it, he was like, you know, the Tifosi, the Ferrari fans, they deserve this, and XYZ, we've put so much hard work into this car, and you know, we have two great drivers. And then seeing how that story arc ends at the end of this season, where they don't win and they're like, oh, well, we deserve second place, we've been working really hard. It was just kind of pitiful to see, because I remember there was a headline last year where Mattia was like, oh, well, we were never fighting for the championship, we were just aiming to do as best as possible. And it's like, dude, no, in the beginning of the season you were saying you guys wanted to win it all. Yeah, like, there's no shame in saying we wanted to win and we weren't good enough and we're going to come back even harder next year.
Right.
But then they just settle and say, oh, well, we deserve second place. Like, I don't know.
Ferrari has
Maybe
that
already
thing.
Checked out at that point.
Yeah. Well, and Ferrari has that problem where, like, because of the media and because of the fans are as ravenous as they are, it's like, if Ferrari fails, it's either a grave disappointment, but they're still the greatest racing team ever, or it's blamed on somebody else. You know, it's never the car. It's never the Ferrari as an organization.
Yeah.
It's always some other external factor that's causing it to have problems. And it's just, you know, it's funny. It's just like, Ferrari is like a really, really powerful, fast racehorse that's on an ice portion of the track or something. Like, it can't, every time they think they're getting momentum, like, they slip and fall on their face.
Yeah.
And as an institution of the sport, like, you know, I honestly feel like I don't want to see Ferrari leave. I mean, I like that they're in there. I think they wouldn't be what they are if it was not for Formula One. That's like their entire bread and butter. I mean, you know, it would be like if the Lakers decided, well, you know, we're just going to sell merchant basketballs. It's like, well, you're not going to have a team? No, but like, as a brand, we're, you know, it's like, no, I mean, they got to be there. Even if you don't like it. But talking about, I guess, bouncing back, that is the title of the second episode, which focuses particularly on the porpoising problem, and also has that famous scene with the driver principal meeting where Christian Horner you know, tells Toto to, you know, change his, you know, his effing
car. Yeah.
And then, you know, Toto's like, yo, you need to talk to your drivers say your car's better, drives like terrible, you know.
He's like, do you want to do this in front of the cameras?
You want to do this in front of the cameras, you know. I still have Toto's number. Should I give Toto a call?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
absolutely. He's a friend of the pod.
Yeah, let me give him a call here. Hold on a second.
Good morning.
Toto, hey.
Hello, cutie pie.
Hey, man. Yeah, so Idris and I are we're talking about Drive to Survive. We're talking about the
Toto.
episode. Yeah, Idris is here. You want you shout out to Idris there?
Hey, I've seen you before. You're on TV. You're funny, guys. I like you.
Oh, thanks, man. It's really good to hear from you too.
But yeah, we're talking about that episode of Drive to Survive, Bounce Back, where you had that meeting with Christian. What do you think of Christian?
Guy's a fucking asshole. I'm no mercenary. Nobody pays me. And if I think somebody owes me something, I take it.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's rough.
Have you allowed to say that?
Well, I mean, he did. I guess. Have you solved the porpoising problem? How are things going with the team?
I love my car. This is war. Listen to me very carefully. You're mine now. You belong to me. You're not gonna have your mommy stand behind you anymore and wipe your little douches. No more complaining. No more Mr. Kimball have to go to the bathroom. Nothing. There is no bathroom.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for calling. Well, thanks for answering the phone there, Toto.
Of course.
We'll talk to you later.
No problemo.
So obviously everybody had porpoising problems at the beginning, and we explained kind of porpoising. And do you want to like kind of give a quick little layman's rundown of the porpoising problem?
So porpoising is a side effect of having ground effect cars, right? Which are the current regulations of this season's cars. What's happening is as you are funneling air from the front of the car underneath it, you are creating a low pressure region where you have a higher pressure region above your car, a low pressure region below your car. That high pressure wants to go to a lower pressure, so it's going to push down your car, increasing the downforce, which increases your speed, your grip capability of your tires. It's just all around better for your performance. However, you can get to a point where you have pushed the car so low that you have stopped the ground effect. That's what that suction through the bottom of the car is. And it stalls out, bottoms out, and it comes back up, right? And then you start that whole process over again. This is happening in cycling so many times per second. So the car, you'll see it coming down the straight, and you're just seeing the car go bounce, 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 right? And that would be bad for your head, your spine, your back. Insert Kia song here. So, so just not good overall for performance and health.
I think at this point this year, porpoising I think is something that still kind of happens, but it's quite a bit less of an issue. I think now, right, in this season.
Yeah,
it seems to be like
I think
not
most
as
people,
a big of a problem.
Yeah, I think most people have kind of gotten a handle on it. Mercedes, I think, is still the worst of it. Alpine is they have like no porpoising. The Alpines and Red Bull are pretty good about it.
Yeah.
But Ferraris, you just see them come. They also have experience in porpoising, but not as much as the Mercedes.
It's interesting watching this one though, because it's like we're so used to Mercedes being on top and just being that driving force that they have always been, and now they're just like suddenly like it's this problem with they're suddenly just like, oh well, now they're on the back foot and they're not used to being on that back foot.
But it's kind of fun though, right? It's kind of part of the regulation change where you kind of have to.
Yeah,
it switches things up,
right? And it's like it's normal. I mean, we've seen it how many times? It's happened so many times. And I mean now, and this is also sort of like it was a little bit of a screenshot of like Lewis Hamilton and George Russell and like who's doing better at what team, what driver, and like I think was this also the episode where they showed Zhou Guanyu's big crash? I think, right?
Yeah,
which is really intense. If you have not seen that, talking about well, he didn't get yeeted and he kind of got yeeted into the air, but it was more or less just what happened to the crash structure above him when the car was flipped on its top, which just does not happen that often. It kind of reminds me of Marcus Ericsson's crash in the first season, where it's just that, but also Alfa Romeo, that gets kind of flipped around. It was just sort of more or less a highlight. I think the big thing was that big driver principal meeting, and it was also hilarious to watch. I think it was like Gunther and Otmar. They're just like sitting there, just like, oh, this is fun. Like, we don't have to participate. They're just like watching these, like it's like it's almost like a Real Housewives show, but it's just be called like the Real Racing Directors of Formula One or something. That would be hilarious if they did like a show. It's like they all have that moment where they're looking at the camera and they turn and like put their arms around cross their arms in front.
Gunter. Toto.
Toto thinks he's the best in the business, but I've been around long. I'm also dating a Spice Girl, like, and just like I want to see one of them whip wine at each other,
Yeah.
Like, something
do the whole like pointing at the cat meme,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Just replace their faces. Well, so let's talk about episode 3. This one was called Matter of Principle, and this is where they showed the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah.
You want to talk about how they presented the Miami Grand Prix as contrasted to what it actually is in reality?
It seemed like this super sexy event that everyone had to be at, right? Because it's Miami, right?
Yes. Welcome to Miami.
It's just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
The race was dumb. They have a fake marina. Like
yes,
what?
Yes, that was
so whack.
This is where like if you just watch the show and you didn't actually watch the race,
you think
that's
it was
why
super
like
cool.
The rest of it, you think like, oh man, that was the place to be. Check that out.
Yeah.
But as we were actually watching it, we're just like, what is happening? This is so weird. They had a fake marina where they built plastic see-through, like it was basically just like a, like a transparent, like, pour marina where there were like boats like on it, and people were like sitting on the boats like it's like it was Monaco.
Right. It's kind of smart for selling some seats, right?
I guess, but I can only imagine how expensive those would have been.
Like paddock pass
and
prices,
that's the problem. It's like if you're all the cool stuff is gatekeeped away from the commoners.
Yeah, the common folk.
Yeah, that race was very strange. They had the weird police escort thing at like
Yeah,
the end, and
it
like
wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun race to watch.
it wasn't. It's not an impressive circuit. But yeah, but anyway, the other part of that is just sort of it's the tipping point of Ferrari's continual failure
Yeah.
that goes forward through the rest of the season,
Yep.
because I think Max won this one, right? And then that was like the big problem with Ferrari sort of suddenly like losing points out, and yeah,
Yeah, just a
it was a
mess.
tipping point.
Just a mess.
Just a mess. So next one here, a definitely interesting one. Like father, like
Yeah.
son. You want to talk about this one, Idris?
Yeah, this one had me feeling like all kinds of feels. Mick Schumacher is a racer who can stand on his own merit. Yet Haas clearly doesn't know when they have good talent on their hands. This whole episode just kind of shows like a lot of tension and animosity between Günther Steiner, the team principal of Haas, and Mick Schumacher, their driver that they brought on, I think, the year prior. So this was Mick's second year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think Mick is really talented, right? Like
Yeah.
I think he won in F2, right? If I remember correctly, he did really well in the junior series. So it's not like he just was a pay driver, daddy comes in with billions of dollars to get him a seat at the team. No, like he got in there on his own merit. And
he won the 2020 Formula 2 championship.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so, he came into the team during a weird time during COVID. So I don't think he really got like a really whole experience as to what it was like being an F1 driver, right? Especially during the COVID years. But yeah, this whole episode just kind of goes back and forth between Mick and Günther. And this was actually one of my least favorite episodes because first off, they didn't show anything at all between the relationship that he had with Sebastian Vettel, who was honestly like a real mentor to him and friend to him during the season. And fun fact, Sebastian Vettel looks up to Michael Schumacher immensely. That's Mick's father, right? So it's cool to have that generational thread that's been woven through those three drivers. But there was like no mention of that at all, right? Just in general, they did Seb dirty on the season. They didn't really like highlight who he is as a person, who he is as a driver.
Yeah.
They didn't really talk about his kick-ass Miami Grand Prix 2030 helmet that he wore, that kind of showed Florida just being underwater and like trying to point attention towards climate change.
Yeah.
But yeah, they also made Mick look like this really timid waste of space during this episode. And I was like, don't do my boy Mick dirty like this, because this guy can drive. The Haas last season was very finicky. It's not like the Haas was this amazing car.
Right.
Granted, I can understand the frustration from the team about him crashing because it's expensive. Yeah. Don't act like this is like Alex Albon racing for Red Bull back in, was it 2019 or so?
Yeah.
And him not being up to snuff with Max. Like, no, it's a different scenario.
Right. And I think like, breakage of a car and components is something that gets factored in, or it should be factored in a race team.
Yeah.
Like nobody, like very rare does a team ever go through a season without having an accident of some sort and needing to have the car repaired. The other thing I was going to say, talking again about editing, if you go back and watch, I think it was in Baku, where Mick was having a hard time. Like they were showing him having a hard time, like getting up to speed, and like I swear they were pumping in the sound of the car decelerating while he was on a straightaway. And so it made it look and sound like the car was going way slower and that he wasn't actually trying to push the car. And I was just like, that is unfair.
Yeah,
like they were doing everything in edit to try and make him look as worse as possible.
Like. Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, and that's why I'm so glad that Mercedes picked him up. They're like giving him more time now working on developing this year's car. And like he's taking more of an active role. He's probably doing more effective stuff in the car than he ever did at Haas.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, so yeah, they definitely did him dirty this episode. I was not particularly happy about that.
And honestly too, so I'm a big fan of the Beyond the Grid podcast with Tom Clarkson. Keep it flat out. That's what he says at the end of his episodes. But by the way, Tom, if you're listening, hey, we would love to interview you. It'd be great to have you on the pod. But there was an interview that he had with Günther Steiner, and I did not, and like Tom was really grilling Günther about Mick and about how they dropped him like that. And I was really happy to hear that. And honestly, I felt like a lot of the answers that Günther gave didn't really add up for me. Granted, I'm not a team principal, right? I'm just a dude. But I don't know. I think that interview really lent more evidence that the way the whole Mick Günther breakup, because it felt more like a breakup between Günther and Mick, not really Mick and Haas, you know?
Yeah.
So it just felt wrong how it all kind of went down. But, you know, the important thing is that he's on a good team. He's happy. He seems to be in a much better place. So,
right.
And Haas is too, right? So,
right. Hopefully our friend Mick will find his way back into the sport.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he does, because he deserves to give it another shot in a team that's going to give him support and also
Absolutely.
give him a good car. Speaking about drivers moving around the grid.
Ooh, these next 2 episodes.
Yeah. So, well, let's start with the first one. Our next episode, pardon my French. So this one focuses on the Alpine F1 team and the big thing that happened with Alpine last year. Well, it was a couple of things, actually. I think it all started with Sebastian Vettel announcing his retirement.
Yep.
So Sebastian Vettel was racing for Aston Martin, and he decides partway through the season that he's going to retire, which, I mean, it's his right to do. But it came as kind of a shock. Like, people were not aware that it happened or it was going to happen. So it came out of nowhere. He did a Twitter video or something. And so basically, this episode starts out great because it's Otmar Safnauer like ironing his pants and like, you know, doing this thing. And he's just like such a lovely dude. I mean,
so endearing. I really, really appreciated that they gave us like an inside view to his life. And I kind of want way more of that.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He seems very, a very entertaining person to be seeing or like being around. But anyway, so Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement, and Otmar was very confident that like he was going to be able to retain Fernando Alonso, and that, you know, together, you know, they would progress further, and like they had Esteban Ocon, and like they also had in their young driver kind of academies racing for their lower divisions was Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri, if you don't know, is Australian. His manager is Mark Webber, who is a famous Australian F1 driver from racing with Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel back in the day. And when Vettel announced his retirement, Fernando made a quick negotiation and switched to Aston, which, looking from Alonso's perspective, if Lawrence Stroll offered him, you know, a good amount of money and it was to go to a team that is sort of on the up and up, like they're sort of making progress. I mean, I trust Fernando's instincts, being as experienced of a driver as he is, to be able to go to where the heat is. Now, I mean, I guess him going to McLaren, maybe not the great, you know, going back to there was probably not a great, but, you know, you also had no idea. I mean, McLaren has such a sterling reputation. But anyway, so essentially Fernando leaves and Alpine is like, hey, well, we got Oscar Piastri. He's going to be racing for us. And then Oscar's like, yeah, about that.
Yeah, bro. We didn't sign nothing.
He messaged on Twitter and he was like, yeah, so I'm not going to be racing for them. And there's this whole thing where like you know, Otmar talks about feeling betrayed. Yeah. And like, oh, like they're getting rid of whatever, like, you know, they're breaking up this relationship that we had. And like, but I mean, it's like I said before on this podcast, they should have put a ring on it. They did not put a ring on it.
Yeah.
They did not follow Beyonce's instructions.
I felt bad for Otmar and Alpine.
Yeah.
Because they were definitely in a situation where they had major egg on their face. They were caught with their pants down, that whole kind of thing, right? Like, you lose both Alonso and Piastri in one fell swoop. Like, yikes, that's crazy, right? So I guess this is kind of like a warning to every other team. Always make sure you have good contracts with your junior drivers, right? And I'm sure the rest of them probably do. You know, I can't see that happen with like Mercedes or Red Bull. Red Bull's pretty cutthroat about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I would say, would you be willing to say that like there are certain teams that definitely are a little bit more cutthroat than others?
Absolutely.
As far as like a Red Bull seems to be like a meat grinder.
Yes.
Like, as far as like you got to perform or else you're out. And then Ferrari's just like an emotional meat grinder.
Yes.
And you could be talented and they, you know, they throw you in there and they just beat you down.
#free Leclerc.
#free Leclerc. I'm still sort of on the fence about whether or not Piastri going with McLaren was a good idea. But hey, his loss is Pierre Gasly's benefit. So
yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing, right? So both episodes 5 and 6 are kind of about that. It's the whole Alpine McLaren arc, right? I'm actually really glad, and Aston Martin too, since Alonso left for them. I'm really glad they picked up Gasly. I think Gasly is a fantastic driver. He's been one of my favorites since he joined the grid. I always kind of felt like if he had had like another year at Red Bull, things might have gotten better for him. You know, like when you put anyone next to Max Verstappen, come on now, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna look crazy. So he deserves a shot at redemption, right? And I think he has shown himself time and time again to be reliable and to be that dude at AlphaTauri. So, him and Alpine for the season, it's been really good. It's been productive so far.
Yeah, I think they have potential to make good improvements pretty quickly.
Yeah, and an all French team, like come on, Ocon, Gasly, and a French works team, yeah, fantastic.
There's something about that that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah,
I can't remember the last time Ferrari had an all Italian lineup. I mean, Mercedes technically, I mean, yes, it's kind of German, but they're also based in England, so like it's having 2 English drivers and like an English based team is pretty special. And then Haas, I mean, we have 1 American driver, we just need another American driver.
Well, you mean because Sargent's on Williams, but maybe they can do like some kind of driver swap.
Duh. I said a mind. I'm maybe that was a Nostradamus moment for me. Maybe that's what's going to happen. We'll refer back to this. I'll put the clip up and then I'll have like a music swirling noises in the background. But
yeah, one thing I want to say too about this episode was I really appreciated them showing Daniel Ricciardo during this and giving him some time here because man, you could see it on his face every single interview with Daniel Ricciardo during the 2022 season that he was not having a good time there. And I feel so bad for this guy. And, because honestly, Daniel Ricciardo is Drive to Survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the whole first season kind of focused on him, second season as well. And I think Netflix did such a good job of focusing on him in particular because he's such an approachable, likable guy who has a good sense of humor and is kind of charming and endearing and can draw you in that I don't know if the show would have been as successful had they not picked him as like the focal point.
Yeah, well, I think he just has that kind of personality that's really good at talking to people and being expressive and being a personality. And that's what you want from television. That's what's going to hook you. If they only ever talk to Max, they're just going to get very seriousness and, it's just sort of like talks about how great he is all the time. Well, that leads us right into the next episode then, which is Nice Guy Finished Last, which I'm just going to say as a phrase, I have a sort of love-hate relationship with.
Okay.
Because
why so?
It's because it's used as negative, but also as a positive all the time. I much prefer slow and steady wins the race rather than nice guys finish last. They're sort of like a yin yang sort of thing.
Sure.
But
I'd agree with that.
I will say that Daniel Ricciardo is definitely a nice guy, and he does not deserve to finish last.
Yeah.
And so, I remember in the previous seasons of Drive to Survive, when Danny went to the Renault team, they formed their entire organization around Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes.
Having him there was super exciting for them. They were yes.
Because remember too, he was coming off of a really hot season at Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
And
he wanted to change.
This guy can drive. He is so good. Watching this episode and seeing the clips of his wins, right? At Monaco, he's won several places, but Monaco's the one that's just sticking out to me right now.
Yeah.
And you just see how amped the entire Red Bull pit wall is for him. They're just yeah, Danny, you did it again. Get in there, and just.
Can we also take a quick moment and talk about how many failed well, I won't say failed, but how many teammates Max Verstappen has just chewed through in his F1 career at this point? I mean, literally, let's name them. It's Ricardo, Albon, Kvyat, Sainz, technically, when he was in Toro Rosso, Gasly, and Sergio.
Yeah, this is his sixth teammate. I hate saying sixth.
It's I can't imagine that Max is I know he's the golden boy. Right, for the Red Bull organization. And I think that is exactly why Danny left in the first place, right?
Right, because he knew, I think he could kind of feel that and see that coming too. They're they're really focusing on him. Let me just go make my own destiny. And I understand that too. That's why he left. That was the impetus for that, right? He was let me make my own decision and stand on my own 2 feet. And if it fails, it fails. But I made that decision, Yeah. And there's a certain amount of pride you can take in that. So I understand that.
Yeah. And so they built their whole organization basically around him at Renault.
Yeah.
And so when they were talking about in this episode of getting Danny back, there were a lot of race mechanics that were like, man, we'd love to see you back. We're hoping that you come back to us, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I mean, it would have made sense to me. I personally think that Danny going to Alpine would have been a better decision. Whatever, but he also just had to leave McLaren.
Yeah.
So, but then that also just makes it what would have happened to Pierre Gasly, and that's the problem with silly season. It's a lot of shuffling.
Knock-on effects. Yeah.
I do love that they're definitely giving Danny some attention this year at the team. So I
I
think
love
it's
it.
good. Now, talking about giving attention, this next episode, Hot Seat, is talking about revolves around Sergio Perez. Now, here's where it starts to get juicy, because this is like what I said when I talked about how if you watch the season, there is stuff that you get that they do not talk about in Drive to Survive.
100%.
You want to talk about some of that stuff that they put in there? And like,
so this whole episode focused on Sergio, or Checo Perez, during, I think they really focused on Monaco a lot, right? Here's the thing, if you didn't know this. So during the actual season, Checo ends up winning the Monaco Grand Prix, right? Later that evening, apparently he's going out, and there's lots of video clips and photos that are coming out of him like at clubs, like with women, like whether it's him like kissing up on them or dancing on them or something. It looks like he's, definitely like saucy and like getting real close to some people, right?
Yeah.
That are not his wife. Well, over the weekend, Max Verstappen's mom tweets about how, I don't know if it was Twitter and Instagram. She was posting about how, he should be focusing on his wife instead of going out there, being out there in these streets, cheating on his woman who just had their third kid. And man, like the internet was just like, huh? Was going nuts, because like here you have the mother of his teammate just putting his information out there like that. You know what I mean? And it was so dramatic. And if you think about this episode through that context, it's really interesting, right? Because they made it a point to show that Checo loves his family, loves his wife, loves his kids. They show a clip from his wedding and everything. And there's no mention at all about any of that drama.
No.
And it's probably because they want to make sure that they can maintain Red Bull behind the scenes access, right? Because Christian Horner clearly loves being like the center of attention of the show.
Yeah. Well, and to make things even more interesting, that whole situation came out coinciding with this incident that happened in Monaco. Right. So
yeah, with the crash during quali, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So later on in the season, the championship had been decided, and Sergio was fighting for second place in the championship.
In the championship.
And all it would have taken was Max, who I think in the last race was in like 6th place or something.
He was in 6th place, and Checo
Sergio
was
7th. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could have easily just done team orders to swap the two, because spoiler alert, Max had the world championship sewn up. And so swapping those places would not have affected Max's championship. It wouldn't have affected Red Bull's championship
at all.
But it would have given Sergio 2nd place in the championship. Max didn't do it. Why didn't he do it? Because, well,
he came on and he said, we've already talked about this. I won't do that on the radio. So everyone watching the race at home is just like, wait, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, what?
And you know what? I misspoke. So I said the Instagram post or the tweet was like during the Monaco weekend. No, it was actually during this weekend.
Yeah.
It was the Brazil race, wasn't it? It was.
I can remember it was Brazil or if it was Abu Dhabi. I can't remember.
It was a few races later.
Yes, it was like 6 races later.
Yeah, the Instagram post came out because people were like talking trash about Max. They were like, "Oh, he's not a good teammate and everything. What is this big problem that they're talking about at Red Bull?" And then that's when his mom came out with the post, and so it made things even more spicy. And you're just like, "Holy crap!
Yeah,
what happened at Monaco?"
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, apparently, according to Max, he claims that Sergio deliberately crashed in order to make sure that he would be on pole and spoil his lap.
So did Max actually say that, or is that just kind of the presumed?
That's what Max, apparently that is what Max is citing as being, because I think he alludes to like, he basically alluded to like, Sergio did this to me, so he needs to have, he needs to be punished for it, basically. It all ties back to Monaco, because apparently, according to what Max was suggesting, that Sergio crashed deliberately to prevent Max from finishing his hot lap, and so that he would be on pole position. Now, this is not unusual. Rosberg did it. Michael Schumacher did it, although they didn't crash their car. They just went into the runoff area and stopped. So that's where it's a little, I don't know, because like, I don't think Sergio would be so reckless as to try and crash the car. Like, I think there's easier ways to spoil a lap if you're going to do it deliberately. But like, apparently they were showing data on the car, like that, like, oh, he spiked the gas right as he was coming out the corner, and that caused the car to spin. And there's all this speculation, but regardless, I think that Max holding a grudge to that sort of extent without real definitive evidence that that was the case is a little crappy, particularly if you have already won the championship and your team has already won the championship. I mean, what is one place? You know what I mean? Why are you putting your flag on this hill?
And that's the thing. We don't, still to this day, we don't know 100% what happened, right? And we probably won't ever find out, right? Unless someone comes out with like a Red Bull mechanic comes out with like a tell-all or something, you know?
Or like Sergio just decides after he retires, like, yep, I did it.
It was me.
It was me. We're never really gonna know. But that was like they like you said, they did not cover that at all.
Yeah, they just showed the best parts of his life and his character. So
right.
Yeah.
We're down to the last 2 episodes here, and the biggest thing that I can remember these last 2, the thing that got me kind of like, what, is once again, the end of the actual season last year happened in Japan.
Oh my God.
It was a super rainy race.
Stupid.
Right?
Suzuka,
I mean, for one thing, there was Carlos Sainz spun. There was a truck on the track, and Pierre Gasly nearly ran into him.
They don't talk about that at all.
They don't talk about that at all. Not even a mention. And that was a big problem.
Yeah.
But of course, they're not going to talk about that because that's, you know.
And let's talk about why it's a big problem. It's a big problem because someone died on track, or no, not on track, died as a result of an incident, a crash resulting from that later, right?
At Suzuka.
Back in 2014. At Suzuka, Jules Bianchi.
In the similar situations involving a tractor. So like not good conditions. The tractor should not have been on there, but it was anyway. But anyway, they stopped the race. They only run a certain amount of distance. And there's all this like, oh, well, like, did Max win? Like, did he not win? Because like there was like fractional points, you know, put together or whatever. And then we just get the most awkward moment where Max is up at the, you know, ready room or whatever. They usher him into this little side room with like a Wayfair chair and a big projection screen preloaded with his face all over it. And he's just sitting there like looking really awkward and like he doesn't know what to do. And then he just gets up and walks out and he's just like, yeah, it's kind of lonely in there. I'm like, yeah, they don't do anything like that. They make it sound like he won it on track. But I think like even with the editing, it's like they knew that because it wasn't this triumphant moment, he didn't do burnouts on the track. They had to find a way to edit it. And so they kind of did, but it's just sort of like you wouldn't even know unless somebody told you that he won, like you might not have even known watching the show that he was the champion, like because they barely, because it was such a nothing burger of a finish. It was it was so disappointing. Like you want to see him finish on a track, you can understand if it's like can't happen because of weather, but that was really the last really big one that I remember watching Drive to Survive. I'm like, they don't even touch that.
Well, that and also too, I think the other big thing was that we need to touch on is the fact that Red Bull went over on the cost cap. And the catering thing is just such nonsense. It's like
we definitely
they cheated. They cheated.
Yeah, they did.
That's cheating. Like,
we've definitely talked about that a bunch. You know, that's where like my whole controversy of me thinking that Red Bull is, you know, cheating. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about how they displayed that? I mean, because Christian Horner, I think famously in the episode was like, it was for catering.
Yeah, it was for catering. Like, I don't know. I really like the way Zach Brown broke it down. He was like, look, you can say catering all you want, but all that means is that you could have spent that extra money on your car. And that's probably what you did, you know?
Well, how big of an impact do you think $500,000 makes on an F1 car? I mean, because isn't like a side mirror like $300,000 or something on an F1 car?
I don't know the price point. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. That sounds really expensive. I mean, maybe like $3,000, you know, depending on the materials. But, you know, that could be a lot of additional analysts who are running CFD, who are running any kind of simulations. That could be extra parts you're testing. That could be a lot of things, you know, and that sounds like a small amount relative to the value of money that they're putting into the car when they're developing it, but it could make a difference, you know, and that's the thing. You're operating on that could part, right? And that is enough of an open door for you to just say that you cheated.
So a steering wheel for an F1 car is about $50,000.
Wow.
A set of wings, like the front wing and a rear wing, is about $200,000. So yeah, maybe a side view mirror is maybe like $20,000, maybe $10,000. Still a lot of money. I honestly think more of with the cost breach cap thing. I think it's more about the principle of the thing, right?
Exactly.
You know, it's like the fact that you broke the rules. There's a hard cap on this. This isn't, we're not just doing this just because we're mean. There's a reason why these captors are in place, and you need to draw that line in the sand somewhere. And so if that's across your catering budget, then it's across your catering budget. I mean, I'm sorry, like you can't massage that. But Christian is really, really good at like making you seem like you're the antagonist here. You know, that you're the one that did it wrong. Yeah. He's like the king of gas lamps, like gaslighting everybody. Maybe that'll be a little out of context thing. Just like, somebody holding a gas lamp and it's just like Christian Horner saying like, it's your fault. It's dark in here. So overall, what rating out of 5 stars would you give Drive to Survive season 5?
Well, it started off pretty good. I thought the episodes 5 and 6, like dual episode arc, was really good with Alpine, McLaren, and Aston Martin. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there were some things that they really just did not go into enough detail on that I think kind of did the product and also the fans a disservice. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, but I don't know. I'm really bothered by the lack of talking about the safety car or the tractor on track during Suzuka. That was kind of messed up. So
yeah.
How about you?
I agree. I give this, I honestly would give this a 3 stars.
Wow.
Maybe 3.5.
Wow.
Only really because, I mean, honestly, as I was watching it, I mean, the crowd between the store use crowd cheering, completely skipping out on Vettel, the whole recontextualizing Sergio Perez, completely leaving out the whole thing with Gasly on track and Suzuka, and also just the whole thing with Suzuka in general about who won whatever and whatever points. I also just feel like they were really, really, I felt like so much of the stuff that they were doing, it felt really staged, especially like the beginning with Benito and Gunther in the Fiat. Like, I'm just like, this feels like, doesn't feel natural,
Yeah. Hearing your analysis, I'd drop it down to a 6 out of 10 then. Yeah, I do. I do agree.
I thought, did I say 10? I'm at 5. But that's fine. Whatever.
Oh, okay. 3 out of 5. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, 3 out of 5 is 6 out of 10. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. The same.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok at F1 or FOFF. Or you can email us at F1 or FOFFpodcast@gmail.com. Please let us know how we're doing, and we'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next race weekend.
All right. Later, y'all.
Everybody. Peace.